What are we making today, guys?
Cabbage.
And what else would we mix it with?
Salt and cabbage.
Salt and cabbage. And what does that make when you do that?
It gets salt.
Okay, but then what does it turn into?
Cabbage.
Sauerkraut. Sauerkraut. We're making sauerkraut today, guys. So I'm going to clear the area and we'll get started. Thanks. Be right back. Well, there you go. There's your intro. We're making sauerkraut today. So I think first I will start by recommending a book, okay? So if you're getting into learning how to cook healthy, for sure you need this book. It's Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon Morell. There's a huge section in here about fermented foods and easy recipes that you can make for your family to nourish their bodies, okay? So that's the first one. You can buy it online at any major bookstore. Amazon has it. It's under $30, you guys, and it's huge. It's a huge cookbook. It also states in here why to eat certain foods. Each page is packed full of information of not just, there's a pickled, what is that? Pickled pearl onions. But then off to the side here, there's like the historic use. And a ton of information, so you guys need this book, okay? That's the first thing. The next thing is, it is time to make fermented honey garlic. I have another video on this. I will leave it in the description below. But it is time because cold and flu season is coming, and this is such an easy, delicious remedy to fight off and boost your immune system, okay? So I will leave that in the link below, but it's time to make this. Just a little reminder, everybody. And it's super easy. So that's what that was for. Okay, so first, let me start off by saying, why would you want to eat fermented foods? So our body cells are actually outnumbered 10 to 1 to bacteria. So what you put on your body and in your body determines whether you're going to have more bad bacteria or good bacteria. So it's actually really, really important that you're constantly putting good bacteria into your body. There's a fear in our society that is against bacteria and that bacteria is bad, but actually we're mainly bacteria. We're outnumbered by our human cells. So it's important to have good bacteria. Let's see, and the more variety, the better. Sure, you could take a probiotic pill, but you're not going to get the same strains or even the same strength as actually eating sauerkraut. But there's like beet kvass you could drink, there's fermented carrots you could eat, there's kimchi you could make. All those recipes are in that cookbook, but there's just so many good bacteria you could be introducing to your system. So another reason why we eat fermented stuff is because if you eat it 15 minutes before your meal, it tells your gallbladder to produce bile, which helps break down fats and protein. And so it also signals for the stomach to make stomach acid. So 90% of us have low stomach acid, and this really, really helps. So if you find yourself having indigestion after eating certain types of meals that are heavy in fat or deep fat fried or that sort of meal, heavy carbish meals, or you have acid reflux, there's a ton of things that actually hint back to you actually having low stomach acid, and this will help with that. So let's just continue on, shall we? So when I first got into fermenting, I bought this fermentation kit by Mason Tops. It's really, really great. It's great for small batch stuff. Today I'm going to make a whole gallon of sauerkraut, so it won't work for that, but it comes with like little lids that go on the top of your jars that let the gas escape. It comes with glass weights, which weigh down your fermented product below the brine so it doesn't mold. And it also comes with a kraut pounder to pound sauerkraut. I actually don't use this much anymore, and I'll show you why in a little bit. So I'm going to pack all this up. Oh, it also comes with its own cookbook with more recipes. Okay? And you can get this on masontops.com. I'll leave a link below. So today I'm going to make cabbage or sauerkraut using purple cabbage. You can also use green cabbage. It's the same process. It's just a way different taste. And my youngest son, who was in the intro there, prefers purple sauerkraut. So that's what I'm going to be making today. So I'm going to lower the phone down here. so you can see what I'm doing. So this is a really big knife. Don't be afraid, okay? The main point of using a large knife is we're going to cut through this cabbage and we're going to get out the the core of the cabbage. So we're going to remove this, okay? So I typically just cut it at a V to take the core out, okay? So then you're left with this. Now this is going to get shredded. Today I'm going to use a food processor, and instead of using the holes to shred it, I'm going to use the, geez, I sneeze in every single one of my videos, the slicer blade, okay, instead of my sauerkraut. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the cores out of all these cabbages. No. I have about 6 pounds of cabbage here, which is going to make about 3/4 of a quart of, or sorry, 3/4 of a gallon of sauerkraut. If you're just wanting to make a quart, I would just get yourself a 2-pound head. So I'm going to go ahead and I will chop out the rest of these, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I have completely cored out all of my sauerkraut, or cabbage, I mean. And you're going to want to keep these cores because we can use them as a weight, just like I showed you earlier. In that kit came those glass weights. You can also use things like the core to the cabbage to weigh down the cabbage. So I'm just going to set these aside. And now I'm going to take my heads of cabbage, and depending on what you're doing, if you have an old-style mandolin, slicer, it's ready to go. I'm going to be putting it into my food processor. So I need to chop this up so it goes through the food processor and fits in there. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to do that with all of this. This one didn't get cored. I missed one. So this 3/4 of a gallon will last my family almost a month. We try to shoot for 1/4 of a cup, but we don't always. But 1/4 of a cup is ideal before you eat each meal. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and shred this into the food processor, and then I'll bring you guys back. All right, I'm on the last head of cabbage. I'm going to go ahead and shred it so you guys can watch, and I'm just dumping it into a big bowl over here, okay? It's important to note the weight of your cabbage, because in a minute I'm going to tell you the ratio of how much salt to add per pound of cabbage. Okay, so it's all going right into a bowl here, a big bowl of cabbage. Okay, and I know that I had 6 pounds of cabbage. So for every 1 pound of cabbage, you're going to do 1 teaspoon of healthy salt. So that's pink salt, like pink Himalayan salt, sea salt, or real salt brand. And you're going to incorporate that into the cabbage. So since I had 6 pounds of cabbage here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add 6 teaspoons of salt. Okay, so 6 teaspoons of salt. Here we go. 1, 2, and I'm just going to mix up the cabbage with my hands so that we get a little bit of salt on everything. So that was 2 teaspoons of salt, so we need 4 more. So that's 3, 4 total teaspoons of salt. Okay, and then 2 more. Okay, so now you're going to take your hands and you're going to squeeze the cabbage. This is the part where some people would use the kraut pounder and pound the cabbage. Basically, the science behind it is you're using either your hands or a kraut pounder to break the cell walls of the cabbage. And once that happens, the salt draws out the liquid of the cabbage, draws out the water. So we're just going to keep on squishing this. And as you can see, I don't know if you can see it on camera, the lighting's kind of out with the light coming through, but This looks very, very crisp in person. And as we squeeze it, within a few minutes of squeezing or pounding this cabbage, it's going to look limp. It's going to look kind of like cabbage that has been in coleslaw. Just, doesn't look stiff anymore. It's been kind of sitting out coleslaw maybe. And that's what we want. So we're just going to squeeze away. And then the last step to this, now you could pound it, and you could pound it, and you could pound it. But what I learned is if you just squeeze it and get it to that limp stage, you can actually just walk away and come back in 1 hour, and we're going to fill our jar. And that's how easy it is to make sauerkraut. The salt may have to go up or down depending on the water content of your cabbage. But 1 teaspoon for every pound is a good place to start. So this is already reducing. This bowl was really, really full when I started. And as it gets limper, the bowl is going to appear and going to get less full because it's starting to get limp. So that's all we need to do. I'm going to make sure I squeeze the stuff on the bottom here. That's all we're going to do. And we're going to come back. I'm going to cover this up with a towel just to keep flies and whatever out. And then we're going to come back in 1 hour and we are going to start packing our jar. So I'll see you guys in an hour. Okay, so it's been about 30 minutes. It's been about 30 minutes. And it's limp. But I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to come through and squeeze it. I was going to try and catch on camera the liquid. See the liquid on the bottom down there that's coming out? It's purple. That's what we want. We want to be able to squeeze and have the liquid coming out. So I'm just going to go around this bowl and I'm just going to squeeze. Squeeze the cabbage. We're getting close. I don't know if you guys can see how moist the cabbage has become, but it's quite limp and moist. That's what we want. So now we're going to cover it with a towel and we'll be back in another 30 minutes. Okay, so we're back and it's been an hour. So I'm going to start filling my jar. I have a empty gallon glass jar to put it in, but you could use any size jar, really, as long as all of your sauerkraut fits. So we're just going to put the funnel up here. And we are going to put the sauerkraut into the jar. Quite a bit of liquid on the sauerkraut now, so there's a big old pile of liquid at the bottom of the bowl at this point. So I'm going to fill up my jar about half full, and then I'm going to just push it down with my fist. You could also use the kraut pounder if you wanted to help push down the sauerkraut into the jar. I just use my fist because it's attached to my body and I don't have to go drag it, to go get it out of the cabinet. So it's easier for me if my tools are attached to my body. Okay, into the jar it goes. And the goal, as you will see here in a minute, is to fill the jar and then submerge the shredded cabbage underneath the brine that we now have because we have allowed the cabbage to sit and the salt has expelled or sucked, or I don't know what the word would be, brought out some of the liquid from the cabbage, okay? So we're almost there. It's almost full. And we're going to fill our jar, and then we are going to go ahead and weight it down so that the brine does cover the vegetables. And this is going to go ahead and sit at room temperature for 3 days. And then you can move it to your choice of cold storage, like a refrigerator or a root cellar, if you have a root cellar. Whoopsie. Down you went. Okay, so I wanted to put you on the counter so you can see that, hopefully, that when I push down on this, you can see the liquid rises up above my hand, or above the level of the cabbage, and that's what we want. I'm going to get about 2/3 of a gallon out of that 6 pounds there. Okay, so now there are a couple of options. If you use the quart-sized jar, you could use, and I'm actually going to use them in here. I'm going to go grab them. I'll be right back. I'll show you. So as I was saying, there are a couple things you can do. The first thing you can do is use your extra pieces of cabbage. And if my lid was a little bit lower, in other words, if the cabbage filled up this jar a little bit more, you could arrange the chunks on top of your soon-to-be sauerkraut. And then arrange them in such a way that when you twisted the lid on, these chunks would push the sauerkraut underneath the brine. But since I have such a gap on the top of my jar, I'm going to go ahead and use those glass weights instead of these to push the sauerkraut down. And in my glass jar, I can do 3 of these glass weights in a gallon glass jar. And as you can see, it pushes all of the brine so that it is over the sauerkraut. I don't know if you can see that or not. But this is the way it's going to sit. I'm going to go ahead and put a lid on. And more juice will be released out of the cabbage over the next 24 hours. And so you always want to make sure that when you're fermenting that you do not go above the shoulders of any jar. Because what can happen is the fermenting product starts to bubble, starts to ferment, and it can push the liquid up and out of the jar and all over your counter. So I always say don't go above the shoulders of whatever size jar you're filling with your sauerkraut. So this is all there is to it. In 3 days, like I said, I'm going to come back and I'm going to move this to cold storage. I'm going to remove the weights, and it is ready to eat. You do not want to can this. I know that a lot of people through the generations have started canning the sauerkraut. And the reason why you don't want to can it is because that destroys all the beneficial bacteria that you have worked so hard now to create. So you're just going to store this in the refrigerator. It can last up to a year. It just keeps getting stronger tasting as the year goes on. So you don't have to worry about this going bad in your refrigerator. That is all there is to it. If you guys have any questions, please leave them down below in the comments and I will get back to you. And if you like alternative thinking and new ideas and new ways to nourish your family, please subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have you as part of our community. Have a great day. See you in the next video.